Hey everyone, welcome to our Beyond the Pulpit podcast. We are so excited to be able to have conversations about those things you wouldn't talk about on a Sunday morning, whether it's because, you don't have enough time, or hey, it's a little controversial, it's a little uncomfortable. Hey, it's so good to be back with you for Beyond the Pulpit. We're going to have a lot of fun this episode. We're excited about it. It's all about vision. It's good to be with you, Pastor Gabe. It's good to be with you, Pastor Andrea.
Thanks.
Yeah,
good to be
all
here.
vision.
So glad to be here. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about vision. And it's been, 6-7 months since Vision Sunday. And kind of just want to...
Almost 6 months.
Yeah, dive into that. It's been a little bit of time. And, sometimes if you don't talk about things and bring them back up, you tend to, let's be honest, we forget sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. We all need reminders.
Fast.
Yeah. Vision 2024. Mm-hmm. What I'm kind of curious, like how do you start like vision for a church? Like this is like really the first time that you guys have really ever had to do this in your new roles.
Yeah.
But like where does it start?
Yeah.
And how does like God put that on your heart? And then kind of just lead that into like where did the vision for 2024 come from?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I'm going to let you answer that one.
Oh, thanks. So I think there's that's a great question. I think one thing that's really important is the scriptures talk about where there is no vision, the people will perish, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So God is a God of vision.
Sure.
He gave vision from the moment he created humanity, right? We call it blessings. Hey, I want you to be fruitful. I want you to multiply. That's a blessing, but that's also vision. So God is a visioneer. He's a vision God. And so we believe that every lead pastor of a church who's been anointed and called for those body of believers, that God gives them vision, right? Gives them a perspective, gives them direction, right? It's directional leadership for the church for that year. And so you ask the question is, how does someone do that? Especially like this was the first year that God gave us a specific vision that would come from us for this body of believers, for Life Church. But one of the things that we did for several years is we would look at those folks like a Pastor Randy and others, the founding pastor of Life Church, and go, hey, what learn from them?
Yeah.
What is God saying to them? How does that work? How does vision work? We did a lot of reading, understanding how do we process vision? How do we share vision? Because here's the reality. People will follow vision.
Yeah.
We love vision. If you really process through that, unpack that in all areas of life, there's vision. We all of a sudden we're drinking a type of soda, or we're wearing a certain type of clothes. That was because someone had vision that then got translated into a marketing strategy that ultimately got us connected to it, right? Yeah. And so life is about vision. And so it was it's exciting when God gives you that vision. But
people have vision for their families too, right? It's where are we going as a family? What are the things we value, but then where are we going? So go ahead, you can.
And I think that's really important. I think one of the things that we probably as a family could do better at is providing clear vision. But I know a lot of great pastors, great leaders, great people that they actually have family vision meetings in the beginning of the year. And they, and that's become a real popular thing, even with individuals. A lot of people do vision boards, right?
Yeah.
They have these vision boards in the beginning of the year, and they have a word that God has given them, and so forth and so on. So I do believe that people are becoming more attuned, is that a word, attuned?
Yeah.
More attuned, more interested in vision, because it's scriptural. Right? Why did God say if there's no vision, the people will perish? Because then they're going in different directions.
Yeah.
Right? And vision gives us direction. It tells us where we're going, right? God told Moses, hey, I want to take you, into the promised land, right? He didn't end up going, but, there was vision. And then given Joshua vision, and all heroes in the scriptures, God gave them direction, gave them vision, and ultimately gives them something to accomplish, a goal to reach, right? Yeah. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but hopefully I did.
Yeah. No, yeah, it did. And it's good too, even just setting goals. Like if you don't set goals, you're just, you'll never be able to measure even what you've done. You can just be going around in circles over and over again. So for 2024, the vision God word was re-engineer.
Yep.
Can you just talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that God gave me that word, I think it was probably in May or June of 2023. I don't remember. I didn't bring my journal with me. I wanted to, but I forgot. But he started to show me pictures. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know, and they may know now, but that I'm super creative. It's the way my mind thinks. For many years, I was, in a field before ministry where I didn't get to, even in ministry as an executive pastor, where I didn't get to use those creative juices as much or those creative gifts as much. But I have a very creative mind. And so God speaks to me and teaches me in pictures.
That's good.
And so he started to show me these images that I didn't really know what they were, but there was this images of like a factory but it was super clean. It was super white, meaning like white walls and white floors, and people were wearing those white suits, like where the face is covered, all these things, but it was a manufacturing sort of thing. So I didn't know what any of that meant, but he started showing me pictures of that. And then I started seeing pictures of like iPhones and specifically iPhones. Nothing against the Android users, but it was iPhones. Yeah, I'm just telling you what God did. So and
God's an iPhone user.
Started to process that, and kind of as that unpacked, and this is how God, like, it wasn't like one day to the next, like, oh, one day it was like God said to me, and like the heavens open, like the God word for Life Church for 2024 is re-engineer. It wasn't like that. It was over time. If you actually look at my journal, I would write something, then I would cross it out, and then I would highlight something, and I would have a word here, or I would have a word there. And then what really started to come together was I was having a conversation with, I believe it was our creative director or somebody, and kind of saying, hey, this is what God is showing me, and this is what I think we're going for 2024. And it was definitely a build, because there was a private word that God had given me for 2023, which was sure up the fence posts, which meant, hey, in order to build or a good, healthy foundation, or even to expand a foundation that you already have, you need to make sure that the fence posts are shored up. And so it was like, oh, this is kind of making sense. And so this imagery that God was showing me was very similar to how they build or manufacture iPhones. It's a very, I don't know what the word is, but like super clean,
Sanitized,
sterilized environment. It actually doesn't look like a warehouse at all. I don't know if I know we've been there, but if you've ever been to like a super high-end repair shop for like a BMW or a
Not me.
luxury car. We know you drive a luxury car.
Okay.
So what you notice pretty quickly, is that there's like no oil on the floor. There's no, like, it's super clean. Like the mechanics don't have grease on their hands, and it's super high end. And so those were the images that I was seeing. And so what had happened was, as God was processing that with me, and I was processing it with God, realizing that one of the things that's really interesting about an iPhone is that, I think we're at iPhone. What are we at? iPhone 15?
15.
iPhone 15 is that to go from iPhone 14 to iPhone 15, they don't just throw away everything that they learned and everything about the iPhone 14. They look at it. They process it as a team. Mm-hmm. They go, what are things we can do better, right? It's doing great. It's a great foundation. It's accomplishing a lot. We've sold a lot of these things. It's doing a great job. We love it. But how can we make it better? What can we learn from it? Meaning go backwards in order to go forward, in order to come up with what the iPhone 15 looks like. And so God was showing me this all in pictures, and it was like craziness, what was going on in my mind. Good crazy. But they take all that, and then they come up with the iPhone 15, which if we all pulled out our phones, I know that you and I have a different iPhone, meaning I think I have the iPhone 15, and you have the iPhone 14 or 13. What iPhone do you have?
15.
You have the iPhone 15, right? So if let's just say she had the 13, I had the 14, I actually have the 14, and you have the 15, If we lifted those up, all three of us, most people wouldn't even recognize the difference.
Yeah.
Now, there may be some people that are really, iPhone gurus that'll go, no, I can tell because the camera looks like this and the camera looks like that and this looks like this and that looks
Right.
like. But majority of the population would not even know the difference. But there's difference. There's key differences. Why? Because they re-engineered it.
Yeah.
And they didn't, I don't know, when did the iPhone come out? Do you know what year?
It's like 2007.
Yeah. So like 2007. So what is that? 17 years ago? 17 years ago, like they engineered it at first, but for 17 years, they re-engineered it.
Yeah.
And I believe that God is a re-engineering kind of God.
Yeah.
When we say yes to Jesus, when we get saved, right? And we commit our lives to Jesus Christ, he doesn't say, hey, John Schwartz, you were kind of like a sucky model when you were born. And so now you're going to look so much better. You're going to have a six-pack. Everything that you did for the last whatever years doesn't matter anymore. I'm making you brand new, so forth and so on. Yeah, he makes us brand new, but he takes what he created we were made on purpose for a purpose, right? He takes that and he re-engineers us to be more and more like him, right? And so that was the word that God gave for 2024. And it lined up so beautifully with the fact of transition.
Yeah.
Because we were transitioning early in 2024 into the lead pastor role. The church was transitioning. God was doing something new, right? But he was taking it from something old. God doesn't, a lot of people will say that God, I wrote this in my journal the other day, and then I'll stop and let you respond, or Pastor Andrea say something, is God, when he created the world, right? When he created humanity, when he created the oceans, when he created the birds of the sea, the birds of the sea, the fish of the sea and the birds of the air.
We knew what you meant.
Everybody knows what I meant. Is he didn't make something out of nothing, because God was something. He made something out of something, and the something he made out of was himself. And so God is a re-engineering God from who he is. And so it's so powerful when you think about that.
I think too, even just with, God put that in your heart, but I'm kind of curious to know, like Pastor Andrea, like, we know God like confirms things in our heart. Like what were was your role, and even like, how did this look for you in the last, this was a big adjustment, a big change going from, now you guys are lead pastors of the entire church, casting vision. And I know your roles are like the most significant in our church. I'm just kind of curious to know, were you feeling the same thing, like in your heart? Was God revealing things to you? Was he confirming things for you? Go both. Whether that be even just for the church, for your family, like re-engineering in general.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And I think, as the lead decision maker, he's the primary vision caster, right? And so, yes, he would share that with me, and then we kind of unpack that a little bit, or talk through that and process that. And of course God shared that with him, and it's a beautiful thing, because it was like, hey, the past, we're not discarding the past, but we're using that as like the catalyst to move forward, right? And we're building on the foundation. So everything the process that he goes through, he includes me in the process of it, but it's a lot of one-on-one time with him and God.
Yeah.
And then he kind of unpacks with me and talks through that with me. And I'm pretty vocal about stuff, so which I love that he
I'm sorry.
listens.
Did I just laugh out loud? I'm so sorry.
If I think it's like, hey, I think that's way off base, I have no problem saying that. And I know that when God speaks to him, he usually confirms it with me as well. And so, there is confirmation, like, yeah, this is the direction that we need to go, that, this is what God's saying to us, and like, yeah, let's move forward with this. So,
and I think that not only, of course, number one confirmation that God would confirmation with her, but also as I was listening and having conversations with people on staff and pastors, God was confirming it to me through them. And then eventually they realized that God was saying it to them as well, right? So there was just this constant confirmation. And the reason you know that is because when you shared it, or when I shared the vision, starting with, with Pastor Andrea, and then with the executive leadership team, and then with the campus pastors and the creative team and the staff, it was like you could see people's eyes. Yep, that's what God's doing in me. God's re-engineering me. I just had a conversation with a longtime Life Church person who's very active on our teams at Life Church. And she was saying like the re-engineer word was so relevant to her, that God was just so re-engineering who she was this year, the things that mattered to her, the way she was going to live going forward. It was just so relevant to her. And that's what it's important. Like, so the vision is for the church, the organization, air quotes, of the church. But really, the church is made up of people. Right. Yeah. And so the word that I believe that God gives as lead pastors is not just for the organization. Right. It's for the people. And so how we talked about that, and I think it's important for you, Pastor Andrea, to talk about a little bit about like what that looked like for families in our church. But that word re-engineer was re-engineering. What does family look like? Remember, we talked about God is taking us back to the kitchen tables and back to the front porches and back to the places that originally we would have community and we would talk to. And so I said to the church, re-engineering is not going to look, or re-engineering our families or re-engineering things in our church is not necessarily going to look different than what we did in the past. But it's going to be how we do it. And maybe it's bringing it back. There were families that were, or things that we used to do as a church that were relevant and produced fruit back then that we stopped doing, but God has called us to do it again, right? Yeah. Because one of the definitions of re-engineer is to do it again, right? So go ahead.
And what are you talking about in terms of like small groups and things like that? Right?
Yeah, anything.
So, small groups is not a new concept. It's something that was done, just had a different name, but it's really people gathering together, people doing life together, people, whether it's around a Bible study, whether it's just common interest, whether it's parenting, like, hey, we all are going through the same season of parenting. Like, let's rub shoulders with each other. Iron sharpens iron. Like, let's be with each other and help each other through this season of parenting teenagers or parenting, young children or whatever. So some of those, because small groups, discipleship is the heart of who we are, right? We're to go and make disciples. And so, we've had discipleships, and for a long season, it was working the way that we had it. But that was one area I know that was huge, where it's like, hey, we need to re-engineer the small group, the discipleship model, because we need to kind of go back and just look at that, make it more effective, make it more efficient, make it less barriers for people to get involved. Yeah. And so those were the conversations that were kind of happening behind the scenes, and how God was really just like, enlightening us and the teams about like, oh yeah, let's do this, or let's try this. And so those are some of the things that I think have produced or starting to produce fruit, good fruit from that kind of re-engineer.
Yeah. I think what the COVID, we kind of don't talk about COVID as much anymore, but the side effects or the consequences of COVID, what it taught us was a few thoughts. One is we saw so many people drift away from the church during that season. Why? Because their roots were shallow, right? Their roots weren't deep. They drifted. Their faith in God wasn't deep. So when challenges came, right? Pete Scazzero, what does he call it? The wall?
You hit the wall.
You hit the wall. In order for really become fully committed follower of Jesus Christ, when you hit the wall, you have to be able to get over the wall. Most Christians, I don't know what the percentage is, but they hit the wall and they bounce back, and they never actually grow and form into a fully committed follower of Jesus Christ. And so COVID taught us there was a lot of those people. Yeah. And so what it also taught us was we were created to be in community and to have these sort of conversations. If you actually look at YouTube and social media and all these other and podcasts are really, really popular right now. Why? Because it's conversations. Yeah. It's community. It's getting together, people talking to each other. These are all results of what COVID taught us, which isn't anything new. God said to Adam, which translates from the Hebrew as man, right? He said, I don't want you to be alone. Yeah, is that the blessing for marriage? Totally. But it's also a blessing for humanity that says, or a directive to humanity, or a gift to humanity that says, hey, I don't want you to do life alone. And so the re-engineer small groups, Saddleback Church 45 years ago, or whatever it is, really, pioneered small groups. We weren't doing anything new.
Yeah.
Now, as a church, we did what was called discipleship pathways. They were more large group. And what we realized was people are hungry for this.
More intimate connection.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Sitting around the kitchen table and having a conversation. The other thing that we noticed is it's not about how many people, it's about how effective and intimate those conversations are.
Right. And the transformation that comes from it, right?
Correct.
Because you can have a book club, you can read a book together, but are you being transformed? Are you changing? And even the common interest group. So let's just say we have pickleball, we have, pickleball small groups, but they start and they end with some, devotional, praying together. So yeah, it's fun and there's the community aspect, but then there's also that we want to see, some fruit from this, some spiritual transformation that kind of comes out of it too. So
yeah, we're talking a whole lot. We didn't even get you to respond. We're just getting all passionate.
No, this is good. I'm actually curious to know, with vision, with, especially a word like re-engineer, it's a call to action. Like everyone has a part in this. Like I want to know, like, how is that received with the church, and like, how is that continuing to be received through the church? Has it been met with challenge? Because, some people might be like, yes, re-engineering, we're going to, like you said, this is not scrapping everything we've done in the past, but some people might be like, don't really like this, or.
yeah. Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
So I think change, people, generally, a lot of people are resistant to change.
Yeah.
But I think vision, if you cast vision, right, it's the why, then people buy into the vision. And then when the change comes, it's like, I get it. I understand, where we're headed. I understand why. And so, of course, there's always going to be people that are like, I don't think that needs to change because it's working or whatever. And again, not changing everything, but just using kind of what we have to like, hey, how can we take this to the next level? How can we improve this? How can we make this more efficient or more effective? But I think, and he's great at this, casting vision, kind of paving the way for people before the change actually comes, so that they're like, yes, I see the value in that. I see where we're headed and I'm with you on that. So he's definitely gifting in that area.
Yeah, I think that's really important, right? Well, let me answer the question directly. I think overall, our church responded really well to the vision.
Yeah.
And I think it's two or three reasons. One is that was a confirmation, affirmation, whatever the right word is, that God was in it. Right? That's number one. Number two, I think how we presented it was really well, because what we did was we paved the way. There was a process to casting vision, right? It wasn't like the worst thing we can do as vision people is go, God gave me this vision 6-7 months ago. Now I share it with you 7 months later and expect you to just buy into it today. But I've had 7 months to process that bad boy, right? And so what we did, which was really well as a church, is God shared it with me. I processed it with Pastor Andrea. I then processed it with the leadership team, and then we processed it with volunteers, staff, so forth and so on, and then to the general population of the church. Because what we wanted to make sure was that the pastors, the leaders, the senior leadership, the staff, all of those folks were bought into the vision, understood the vision because they're the core, and they were then the vision carriers. And I think that's what made it really, and that's going to be our vision casting model going forward. We're talking about Vision 2024 right now in May of 2024. And I've already had my first vision meeting of Vision 2025.
Wow.
The first phase of it. And so we're starting to unpack. God has already started to drop that in my heart, and we're starting to unpack Vision 2025. So it's kind of interesting. Like in my brain, I'm trying right now not to leak Vision 2025 while we're talking about Vision 2024, because God still has a lot to do in 2024. There's things we've done. I know this is probably something you're going to ask. Like, what are some of the things that we've seen unfold so far? And we have. And Pastor Andrea will, I'm sure is going to want to talk about the ability tree and what we're doing in kids and youth and all these things that we're re-engineering, right? So overall, I think people have responded well, right?
I think so.
I think what's been challenging for some is maybe they expected it to look a lot more different, but it wasn't, meaning small groups isn't anything new. No, I never said it was going to be new. I just said we were going to re-engineer how we were doing small groups. And, so things like that. There were some that were expecting this, that love change or really believed in change, that they were like, this isn't that different. Nope. I said we were re-engineering. The iPhone isn't much different, right? We talked about that. But it does make a difference. The other thing I think that was important, and you said this, Pastor Andrea, is that there were some that were resistant to change because because they thought it was working, but what was really working was it was working for them. And so what we needed to do, not just as lead pastors, but as campus pastors and as staff and leaders and blah, 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 so forth and so on, was help people to understand that we're actually not created for us, we're created for others. And so just because it feels like it's working for us, when you actually look at it, nope, it wasn't actually working for the cause of Christ completely. We weren't everybody, it wasn't working for everybody. And so once it stops being a vision or once the gospel isn't for everybody, then that means we're actually not preaching the gospel. We're not communicating the gospel. And so there are certain things that we were doing that worked really well pre-COVID or worked really well for many, many years, but it wasn't working because God wanted to pour something. He wanted to pour a fresh anointing on it for this season.
Well, we're sitting right here. This is a re-engineer in itself.
Yeah.
Oh,
Church
that's
Online
good.
was
From Church Online, which was necessary during COVID. The world shut down. We had to get the gospel out there, right? We had to go. We literally went from Church Online in one day
We
was
had nothing.
birthed.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
I know. So it was birthed like overnight. And so, and that worked for a season, but for us as you guys did your research, you did your data, you did all the due diligence to say, hey, we need to switch up we need to re-engineer our online content. And so here we are. This is fruit of that,
And I think what's really important to your point is Carey Nieuwhof said this in I don't know if it was a podcast or one of his reels about a month or two ago about the churches changing their online platform, right? And here's what he said. He said, hey, if it's not working for you the way it used to, change it. If it's working,
keep
it. And so what we did, you were part of this discussion, 2 reasons why we have an online platform, right? For us at Life Church. 1, introduce people to Jesus. And number 2, introduce people to Life Church. If we aren't accomplishing those things in the best way possible, then it's not working for us. And we realized it wasn't working for us. There are other churches that do an incredible online experience. They're still providing a full service and it just wasn't working for us, for who we are. And so we didn't say forget online. No, we just said we're going to re-engineer how it looks, right? And so, yeah, that's a great example.
going in with, re-engineering some of the things that we've done. What are some of the next steps? We still have the rest of the year. What are some other things we're looking forward to? Second half of the year, we have Christmas coming up and summertime. What are some major things or other ways we're trying to re-engineer?
Yeah.
Well, my stuff is still like all in the birthing or in the behind the scenes, still creating. We've taken the first half of the year to really lay the foundation process. And so the next gen re-engineer is really you're going to see it towards the end of the year. And so one of those things is we're creating a preteen. So we've done kindergarten through 5th grade. and we've done youth was 6th grade through 12th grade, but we recognize that 4th, 5th, and 6th grade age group is such a special time that they have specific needs. And so we really recognize, we, did research and data, and just from, having it structured this way over the years, we recognize like we're missing the mark in that 4th, 5th, and 6th grade group. And so it was time for us to re-engineer. So that's going to be towards the end of the summer, we're going to have a preteen new curriculum, new kind of designing the new spaces. So that's one thing that that we've been working on, and we're continuing to work on to launch at the end of the summer. Another thing for Next Gen is we've partnered with the Ability Tree. We literally just had the trainings this past weekend, 2 weekends ago. I don't even know.
2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago. So we are in the process of we being trained. We're coming up with all the process and all the behind the scenes internal things that we need to do and develop so that we can welcome families and we can walk alongside families impacted by disabilities, that our kids and our youth classrooms, and then our whole church is much more inclusive in that way. So that's a huge, it's not a huge re-engineer, because we've always had the heart for that as a church, to be inclusive, to be welcoming. We've just now being more intentional about putting the structure, the policy, the procedures in place to be able to care and minister well.
I think that's really good what you just said, because I was going to say that, and so I'll add on to it a little bit, is we've always had a passion for the next gen. It's been the heart of our founding pastors, right?
Yeah.
The next generation. We're not building this church. We say this, they say this, or said this for so many years, is we're not building this church for us. We're building this church, we're partnering with Jesus in building this church for the generations to come. Because we've been benefited as a church by some of these older buildings, where our studio is in one of those in Allentown, right? That sadly became empty because that congregation was not about the next generation. We don't want to be one of those statistics. And so it's so incredibly important. So we've always been like that, but as coming out of COVID and seeing things and doing research and understanding the people we serve, we quickly realized, hey, we need to re-engineer this so that we can more effectively and more efficiently reach the next generation. And so what we also notice is kids are different than they were pre-COVID. And so how can we reach that preteen age group better? So that's a re-engineer. Listen, there's no rocket science behind this, but it's re-engineering.
Right. We've always ministered to all of those age groups, and now it's just being more intentional about focusing on their specific needs. And just tailoring things a little bit differently. So we've always been about the next generation, but we're just being a little bit more intentional about some things that we've noticed. So
and the Ability Tree, creating a space that's a place, better said, and a space that's welcoming to those families that have children or just families impacted by disability, that's always been our heart. Our founding pastors, have always had a passion for that and are impacted themselves by disability. And so, but where we're re-engineering it is putting structure and putting process and creating a ministry, a team to do
train
that.
volunteers.
To train volunteers to do that better. And all of this, by the way, this is so important, happens because of the generosity of people, right? Vision is given to the lead pastors by God. The vision is given to the lead pastors, but it's accelerated based on the generosity of people. And so there are incredible, generous, amazing people in our church, not just those who give their tithes and their offerings, because that's incredible, their tithes. We need that. That we are called to build the church together, and part of building the church together is through the tithes of people, right? They are instrumental in advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ through our region, through our communities, so forth and so on. But then there's those that have the gift of generosity, just like somebody like yourself has the gift of singing. I think I have the gift of singing, but my wife tells me I do not, and so I have to trust that she's telling me the truth, right? She could just be jealous that maybe I sing better than she does, but I don't necessarily have that gift. Yeah. And so God has given you the gift. He hasn't given me the gift. That doesn't mean that God hates me or doesn't like me as much as he likes you. Nope, it's just the gift. And so there's some people in our church that have been given the gift of generosity. It doesn't matter if they make $1 billion or they make $50,000, they're just always going to be generous with what's in their hand. And so we've created, as part of this re-engineer, what we call a legacy team, which is bringing those people together and saying, hey, you all have a gift of generosity, and it's your gift that helps us to accelerate the vision. And so we want to honor that gift. We want to celebrate that gift. We want to give you a place to use that gift, and we want to align that gift with the vision in order to move it forward. And so we've been able to bring in folks like Ability Tree and others to be able to do that. And so it's so important that I believe what God is doing in our church right now is he's taking folks, individuals, and with different types of gifts, and he's allowing us to take those gifts and bring them together into like a beautiful tapestry in order to advance the vision that he's given us as a church.
So we have this entire team of people that, full of generosity. And it's like, what do we do with this? And, our church, we're here to not only, preach the gospel, we're here to train and equip people. We're here to make disciples. And I know we have some programs and development pathways here in church that, we've re-engineered this last year.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I can. That's a great question. One of the things that as a church we've always done and will continue to do is not just the next gen, but develop leaders, right? And I believe if you look at the strategic plan, which we put together, and it's not necessarily public, but I can share it with whoever wants it, is for the next 5 years, one of the things that we wrote was like, hey, what do we see? What do we see? And one of the phrases that God gave us was that we're a church that would develop people to send them out into ministry, send them out into the marketplace, send them out into the world, right? To use their gifts and talents. And so one of the things that was in the heart of our founding pastor 10 years ago, around 2014, 2015, was creating a space and a place to develop leaders intentionally. And so we created at Life Church what was called Protege. And that worked. It worked well over the last few years. But God, over the last 2 years or so, he breathed fresh fire in it, fresh anointing. He re-engineered it in our hearts. And with the help of our now Dean of Students, Pastor David Mann, and the executive leadership team and so many others, we've re-engineered Protege. And just 2 weeks ago, maybe, we graduated, I think it was around 37 students.
Incredible.
Who are now mobile equipped and are being mobilized in the life of the church to take the leadership they learned and the gifts that God has given them and to use it for advancing the kingdom of God. And so we have, and that's only Protege year 1. We're going to have Protege year 2, which is all about developing future pastors. And so there's just so much that God is doing. We'd have to have another podcast to talk about that in regards to developing leaders. But that's the legacy. Mm-hmm. It's not the legacy. That's the legacy of the church, right? And the other thing we've had to settle in our hearts and our team has is develop to send doesn't mean that we keep them necessarily in our church. It's sending them into the marketplace, into the world, into other churches. And so we've got to be okay is that as we develop these leaders and we equip them and we love on them and we care for them, that many of those may not stay here. But it's part of our legacy knowing that they're going out into other parts of the region, the community, the world, and taking what they've learned and advancing the kingdom of God.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's real good. Yeah, so, we're wrapping up here, but how would you, challenge our listeners to, keep the vision alive, in their daily lives and, every time they come to church, just in everything that they do, keep this re-engineering vision, this God word, just active and in the forefront of their minds and in their daily lives.
Did you want Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's a daily thing, but I think it's really good to do, kind of like check in with yourself on, okay, where did at the beginning of the year, I set this goal or I wanted to re-engineer this part of my life. Where am I, right? Have checkpoints along the way. Like, how am I doing in this area? Okay, I need to tweak it a little bit again. And I think it's, it's important for growth in anybody's life to do that, to reflect overtime on these different things. So whether you re-engineered the way that you spend time with God, maybe that was a way that you, a personal thing that you wanted to do. Like, hey, I want to spend, the first 15 minutes of day. It used to be 15 minutes. Now I want to make it 30 minutes or whatever it is. Right. So how you re-engineer some of your relationships, that, the way you spend time with your husband or your wife or, family members, your kids, whatever it is. So I think it's good to just, again, have these checkpoints along the way and say, how am I doing in this area? Write it down. It's really important to write stuff down, right?
Yeah.
There's scripture that talks about make it plain and clear. And so if you write it, it's a Habakkuk, I think. So if you, write it down, and then you have a place to kind of refer back, and it also holds you accountable too, right? If it's written down, you have a place to go, you have a place to kind of reflect back, how am I doing on this? So I think that's one way, at least, how you can apply it individually and personally for your own life.
I think, I'll say this last thing and then we can wrap it up, is I think we as a humanity, at least on this side of the world, we are really good starters, not really good finishers, right? I'm going to start going to the gym 3 times a week, and I'm going to work out.
February 1st, that ends.
February 1st, all of a sudden it doesn't happen anymore, right? The vision, the God word this year was in January, but we're actually shifting that. It's a re-engineer as a church. I'll be sharing the vision for 2025 in November for the following year. And so now you're thinking November all the way to the following next November, right? That's a long, or December, that's a long time where we have to keep it in front. You have to keep the vision in front. I really appreciated Pastor Ollie, who's on our executive leadership team. He's the executive pastor of operations here at Life Church. He said to us, hey, guys, you got to do something, a podcast, something to keep that vision in front of the people. It was a great reminder that we don't move so quickly that we forget what God did, right? What did God say? I'll say this last thing. What did God say to the Israelites? He said, before you can cross over to the promised land, right, over the Jordan River, right, you need to go and lay some stones of remembrance, right? You need to remind yourself. And so it's important that whatever God spoke to us, and I don't mean us, I just mean us, right, spoke to us in January, that we go back to that. Spoke to us in February, we go back to that. Spoke to us in March, we go back to that. Because it's God is continuing. God, it's not like, oh, that was then and now. No. God it's building blocks to what God is doing in our lives. And so I think for everybody is, what did God speak to you in January? Because it was a God word. So I know God spoke to every single person about the word re-engineer. What did he speak to you about? Open up your journal, look back at it, do some assessments, and keep moving forward. So yeah, this was pretty cool. This was fun.
This was good. Yeah, this was really fun. Yeah, just being able to talk about it again. We're 6-7 months out, and just being able to keep it fresh.
Yeah,
keep it in the.
Also, it helps to see how far you actually have come in a short period of time, because you're like, wow, we did do quite a bit, and it's only end of May, so, or whatever, wherever we are
even
right now.
In your own life, right? To go, wow, these are the things that held me back in January. Now I've accomplished those. I've climbed those mountains. I've jumped over that wall.
And even sometimes, if you feel like maybe you've fallen behind, let this just not be a something to discourage you, but just feel like, hey, you still got time. You can still do this. God's still working.
Yeah, tomorrow's a new day.
That's right.
He's got new mercies for you tomorrow. So
cool. Well, thanks, Pastor Gabe.
Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you.
It's so interesting. We're doing these podcasts, right? When we started to do them, re-engineer, right? We're like, oh, we're going to keep these nice and short. People will be able to listen to them on their ride from Easton to Allentown or from this place. And we're having so much fun with them. They're getting longer and longer. But here's what's great. People can pause it.
New York commuters now.
They can pause it and they can listen to it again.
The Jersey and the New York commuters.
All right, stop talking. We got to end. Okay. All right. Hey, it was great being with y'all. Beyond the Pulpit, make sure you subscribe, you like, you comment, you do all those things you're supposed to do. It helps us. We love you.